Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. I'm your host, Jerrad Wyche. With me, as always, is my co-host, Dominic Orlando.
For the past 10 seconds, I was strongly considering doing like a Borat voice.
Oh, God.
But I haven't done that in, probably a decade, and I just decided against it. It seemed irresponsible. And probably, like, best case, it would have been really offensive. Worst case, it would have been, like, downright just not something that should happen. Anyway.
I appreciate the thought behind the decision. We're going to be moving forward. Thank you for this press conference. We will now adjourn. Sorry for an episode last week, guys. If you noticed, we didn't upload episode what should have been 210. I had a lot of editing issues, and by the time I got done fixing everything, it was already Tuesday, and by that point, Wyche uploaded its old news. So this will be, episode 210, the Redux, second chance at it, like a bad habit. If you have been paying attention to video game news, you'll know that nothing's really happened this week outside of this content or creative director at a studio owned by Google Stadia making one of the worst hot takes about streamers ever. You can go and look that up yourself. But yeah, terrible takes on the internet these days. No news, though. Not a whole lot of video game news that's really worthy of talking about anyways on the podcast. We've gotten some updates to media remotes for the PlayStation 5 and some optimization for Xbox Series X and S ports, but nothing really substantial. In the meantime, we're going to be doing the 2020 Metacritic Fall Predictions Extravaganza. So, from time to time, Dom and I like to do this thing where we look at games that are coming out and kind of predict their Metacritic scores. Obviously, it doesn't really pertain to how we're eventually going to feel about the game or anything like that, but it's fun to think about how the industry is going to review these games. We go with Metacritic over OpenCritic just because Metacritic's more popular overall, though I tend to personally look at OpenCritic a lot more than Metacritic. But we have listed 10 games coming out this fall in 2020. The 10 most notable or interesting games, and we're going to be thinking or predicting what their Metacritic score will be. And we're going to make our predictions now. Closest to the score that's posted on December 31st, 2020 gets the point. So that's something to know because obviously scores can slowly drop over time or rise maybe a couple points over time. So we're going to be taking these scores on December 31st, right as the year ends. And the score counted is the highest among next-gen consoles. So keep that in mind too. So a lot of these games are cross-generational or they're also coming out on PC. We're going to be looking at the highest next-gen score, so essentially the highest score among the Series and the PlayStation 5 versions of those games. Keep that all in mind. First up, we got Bugsnax. Starting off with the PS5 PC exclusive launch title for the PlayStation 5. It's being developed by Young Horses. It's going to be releasing on the release date for the PlayStation 5, which is November 12th, 2020. Now, when looking at Bugsnax, there's some things to consider. It's very Pokemon-like. Obviously, a lot of its influences. It's a little bit quirky. The previous game for the developer Young Horses was Octodad Dadliest Catch. Now, if you think about this, Dom, Octodad got quite a lot of praise for being wacky, right? Really cool, fun game where multiple people can control tentacles on the arms. It's a little frustrating to handle. Not really a story there, but the gameplay is chaotic and it's just a good time to watch or experience yourself, right? What do you think that game reviewed like back in the day when it came out?
I'm going to give it a 71.
So it ended up with a Metacritic of 69. Oh, yeah.
Ooh, nice.
Which is a little bit lower than what I was assuming because people look back fondly on Octodad, right? A lot of people like Octodad. Obviously, it was frustrating to play, but the sentiment around it is pretty much positive. So that was interesting. So when I was looking at Bugsnax, I had to factor that in. Okay, Young Horses, they made Octodad. This game's going to be weird. It's going to have some weird stuff. We've already seen some of that, the undertones of mystery, right? Under the jolliness of whatever this Pokemon-like game is. There's probably going to be a little bit of jank because this isn't a AAA studio, right? When thinking about the score for this, I have to think about also how people feel about wanting to play a Pokemon-style game on a non-Nintendo console, right? That's a big thing. People who, not everyone owns a Nintendo Switch, and people like Pokemon and, yearn for the days when it comes over. I am getting a little bold on this one, and my prediction is that it's going to land at a 75. That's quite a bit higher than Octodad,
Yeah.
right? Quite a bit
Yeah.
higher. But I do think there's a lot of like earnest, good, well-intended writing in this game that's going to catch people off guard. I think the difference with this game as opposed to Octodad is Octodad's thing was its weird controls, which that can really infuriate and frustrate people, and it can really affect the review scores. With this, the wackiness and weirdness to me seems to be story-based, and I really think from early previews, people understand what this game is. It's Pokemon Snap meets Pokemon, and I think it just has a jolly vibe to it. I don't think it's trying to be anything other than what it is. So, yeah, I could definitely see this coming in the mid-70s. Where do you sit on Bugsnax?
I'm going to get it with I'm going to stay with that 71.
71, okay. So a little bit better than Octodad, but still low 70s. Yeah. What do you think the biggest knock on this game is going to be when it releases? If you had a guess.
I say not length, but substance or depth, maybe.
Okay.
I think like it could be a fun little game, but might not have too much going on. Like kind of a shallow gameplay loop and not too deep of a game. I couldn't have like. I don't have too much info. I'm a little bit ignorant on this game, just for transparency. But that's just like a kind of based on the trailer and stuff. That's just kind of a potential vibe I got from it.
Also, I think if this was an Xbox exclusive at launch, I think it'd have a higher chance of getting higher scores. But because it's a launch title for the PlayStation 5 launching alongside some other games we're going to talk about later, I don't think it's going to have the forgiveness of exclusive coming out not alongside a lot of stuff would have. So I think it may be judged against those other games as well. So as it sits, Dom is going with, what did you say, a 71, right? Slightly 71. Above Octodad's. I'm going with the 75. I'm a little bit more optimistic. In the case of a tie, by the way, so if it comes out 73, we both get a point. I think it's better to boost our scores than to eliminate scores. So we could say neither of us get a point, but let's say both of us get a point. What the heck? Next up, we got an Xbox launch exclusive, at least for next gen, Yakuza Like a Dragon. This is the 7th mainline entry in the series, changing up quite a bit for this game, right? They're going with a turn-based combat system, which is quite shocking to a lot of people because if you don't remember, Dom, the way this was unveiled is they showed this game off during April Fools. And everyone's like, okay, it's a Yakuza game, turn-based combat. This has to be a joke. What is this? And they're like, got you. Sega's like, got you. It's actually a real game that's coming out. Interesting. Looking at this, obviously we're not super familiar with Yakuza, either of us. I've downloaded Yakuza 0 and Kiwami, Yakuza 1 Kiwami or whatever, because I want to eventually try to get into them, because I've heard so much good about them. The developer is Ryuga Gotoku Studio, okay? Obviously not a studio we're super familiar with, but they've done all of the mainline Yakuza games, okay? And as we've heard, they've been really praised. Looking back, their last mainline entry title was Yakuza 6, and that came out as an 83, right? Pretty good score. Looking at the rest of them, all the remasters for the Yakuza games are all in the mid to low 80s, right? Hovering in that area. So they all review pretty well. And to me, I'm assuming that the people who are going to be reviewing Yakuza Like a Dragon are people who have reviewed all the other Yakuzas, right?
Exactly.
And I think that the change in combat might be refreshing for the series and take it in a new direction. And the one criticism I'm seeing is it's not performing like a next-gen game. And with that, I don't think that's going to be reflective in the review scores all that much, right? It's like, I don't think it not running at a fluid 60 or coming out at 4K textures is going to influence the rating enough to make it drastic one way or another from what we've seen from the studio. So I'm going with an 85. Like I said, Yakuza 6, 83. I think because of the change in combat system, it's going to be refreshing for reviewers. I think with that type of combat, it's a lot more streamlined of a video game experience. So yeah, I'm going with an 85 for Yakuza Like a Dragon.
That feels high to me. I'm going to go 82.
82. So slightly lower than Yakuza 6. Just a bit. And what is that? Just hunch?
Yeah. This is another one. I don't have. It's just not a game, not a series I have ever played. So it's kind of a tricky prediction.
And that game is coming out with the launch of the Xbox Series consoles, which is November 10th. So keep that in mind if you're looking out for that game. Next up, what was once Gods and Monsters, Immortals Phoenix Rising. So the day of recording this, we're recording this podcast on October 22nd. A lot of previews have been going up about this because of the demo that's available on Google Stadia. Being developed by Ubisoft Quebec, release date of December 3rd, 2020. Now going back, I'm like, what else has Ubisoft Quebec done? Well, their last title was AC Odyssey, right? I'm like, okay, a really good title that reviewed 87, which deserves
really?
that. Because, yeah, it's obviously we love Odyssey here. Cassandra's the girl here for us at this podcast. But looking at the problem with Immortals Fenyx Rising, outside of the weird name change, is that it's shooting for Assassin's Creed and Breath of the Wild, and it's just going to be one of those things where it doesn't hit either of those highs, right? There's no chance it's going to hit either of those highs. It has a little bit of that AA jank to it. The art style really isn't super interesting. And I do think that it's going to be one of those games that when you strip away all of the AAA polish of an Assassin's Creed game and deliver it in a more family-friendly scope, I think a lot of those flaws rise to the surface a lot easier, right? We're like, oh, okay, it is a lot of points on the map to go and do levels of interest. Oh, this isn't as interesting. Oh, I'm fighting these same enemies over. Like, I think a lot of that stuff's going to come up even tougher for this game when you see that same criticism levied at the Assassin's Creed series. So for me, I'm going with the 70. I think it's right on that mark. I could definitely see it being in the 60s. I could definitely see it being in the low 70s. But I'm going to go with 70 straight up and play it safe. Because like I said, we're doing these review scores, right, in December 31st. So I think maybe it comes out as like a 74, and then over time, that score just slowly drops, right, as more reviews come in. That's what it is for me, 70 for Immortals Fenyx Rising.
Yeah, I can see that too. My vibe on this is similar to what we said about Bugsnax, where it'll probably be an alright game, like fundamentally sound and good. But when you put it up against when you think about all the other games that are coming out this fall, several of which right from Ubisoft also, it just feels like it's just not doing anything new and unique enough and cool enough to kind of stand apart. Because I did watch a gameplay demo from a month or so ago, and it just kind of, like you said, it was just a lot of copying from Breath of the Wild and from Assassin's Creed, but without any of its own unique flair. It had weird comedic dialogue that just was corny, though. Worse than
animations are a little janky too.
Yeah, it just seemed like it just didn't have its own soul almost. I know I'm getting weird with this assumption here, but I got a similar vibe as you do. And I'll give it a little bit more credit. I'm gonna say 71.
Okay, 71. Okay. I actually forgot to write down your Yakuza one. Which one? What was that? What did you give Yakuza? 82, right?
3.
No, 83 was Yakuza 6, and I think you did 82, and then I said, just a little bit lower than...
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. You can change it to 3 if you want.
No, let's go with 2. I gotta stick with my first instinct.
Another thing I want to mention is, out of all of the games this fall, I think Immortals Fenyx Rising has the highest chance of having that Days Gone disparity of it possibly not reviewing very well, but the audience loving it, right? I can totally see it as one of those games where the people who get their hands on it love just playing in that world and having a blast, but from a critical perspective, it may be not reviewing all that well, but we'll see. Next up, we have The Medium, which is this really cool horror game from Bloober Team coming out December 10th, 2020, exclusively on the Xbox Series consoles. Doing research for this, by the way, their last previous title was Blair Witch, which got a 69, which I don't think is in the same zone as this, because this is a launch title for Xbox. Seems like Xbox has been backing this game, whereas Blair Witch just seemed like a passion project almost, like a weird license deal. That being said, horror games don't really review all that well. Even the ones that we remember as being great. If you don't know, Bloober Team also did the Layers of Fear games, and people love those games. I love the Layers of Fear games. In my mind, I'm like, those have to be in the low 80s on Metacritic. No, those are in the low 70s on Metacritic, despite how praised the Layers of Fear titles are. So, seeing all of that, I'm going to be a little generous. I could totally see this being a low 70s game, but for me, because of the really cool mechanic in the game of switching between the underworld or spirit world and the regular world, I think if they hit that mechanic, it can do a lot for that game. So I'm going to go with the 76. Like I said, a little bit optimistic, Because I could totally see it being in the low 70s, but yeah, I'm going with the 76 for the medium.
Yeah, so this is kind of the opposite of what I was just saying about Phoenix Immortal, whatever the heck that jumble of a name the last game was. This does seem to like have its own like crazy unique mechanic that they're really pushing, and that the game is kind of built around, which is what you just mentioned about like switching between the two worlds like on the fly. So I think that is gonna like, so to speak, win some people's some hearts of the reviewers, to make it like, a worthwhile game and stuff. So even if there's like some jank around it and it's not like the deepest game outside of that, I still think like them trying to like implement this new mechanic, assuming it works as advertised, which I think it should, I think it'll be pretty cool. I think that'll go a long way. So I'm gonna say, I'm with you. I'm feeling optimistic, but I'm gonna say, you know what? Let's do it. I'm gonna say 78. We're going up.
78. Okay.
I feel real good about this one.
More optimistic than me. It looks really interesting, and that's one thing. Though horror games don't always review very well, this doesn't just look like the typical jump scare, right? There's a really neat, authentic mechanic to it, and it does have a soul that you'll probably be traveling between. Next up, Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. This is a big Call of Duty game this year. It's being developed by Treyarch alongside Raven Software. It's coming out November 13th, 2020, so just a day after the PlayStation 5 releases. Now, Modern Warfare that came out last year has an 80 on Metacritic, right? Which is a lot lower than what I'd assume, because I enjoy that game quite a bit. Black Ops 4, which was the last Treyarch title, has an 85 on Metacritic, which is pretty impressive. Now, what we know about this game is that there was a lot of turmoil behind the scenes with its development. Remember, it was originally Raven Software and Sledgehammer, and there was a lot of fighting and bickering going on between those two studios because Raven wanted more control of the actual development of the title. And Activision came in and said, hey, you two brothers, stop fighting. We're pulling you apart. Sledgehammer, you're going to go work on something else. Treyarch, we need you to get this game in, get this game finished. They came in, turned it into a Black Ops title. It's Black Ops Cold War. I do think that'll affect it somewhat. And I do think that though the Cold War is in an era we've super been into in Call of Duty, I don't know if it's going to hit on the same way as, in terms of review, as Modern Warfare, because they do tend to take bigger risks with the narrative in the Black Ops titles. And I don't know how much they were able to change the narrative that was already in the Raven Software game. So for me, with Black Ops 4 being an 85 and Modern Warfare being an 80, I'm going to play it safe and I'm going to go with an 83, just because I'm not sure where this is going to land in that avenue of review scores. What do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of the safe bet. Yeah, looking at like the averages for all the latest Call of Duty games, they all sit between like 75, 79, and 85 or so, right? So like you could probably safely guess anywhere in there. I think this one is interesting because it's going to come down to where that campaign hits. And yeah, knowing that they might have had some development trouble and some back and forth type of thing going on. And of course, like Call of Duty has to come out every single year. That kind of limits what a team can do, right?
And also keep in mind, this is Treyarch's first campaign in a while. Black Ops 4 didn't have a campaign. Remember, that was a big thing. That game didn't have a campaign at all.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to go high on this. I think the campaign is going to hit. I think it's going to be a fun story. The Black Ops 1 and 2, I love those games. The last Call of Duty games, I really got into. And I like them for the campaigns. They're always interesting enough. 3, I never got into, but I think they went like futuristic with that one and wasn't really.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah. So I think this campaign will hit. I think they figured out a way to pull it off. And they're bringing back characters, right, from Black Ops 1 and 2, which is always a little bit of fan service or whatever it is. That can check some boxes for some people, even those reviewers. So I'm going to say 85. 84.
84, okay, slightly above me. And the interesting thing is, I think Modern Warfare and Black Ops are the safest bets in the Call of Duty world. Like, those are the two most beloved series, so you can't go wrong there. We'll see what happens. Next up, this is one of the... I think this has a huge swing on it. Watch Dogs Legion. This game can land anywhere across the board. Developed by Ubisoft Toronto. Their last game was Far Cry 5. But they also did... so I have the two last review scores for one, the last Watch Dogs game, and also the last game that Ubisoft Toronto did. So Ubisoft Toronto didn't do Watch Dogs 2. That game came in at an 81. They did do Far Cry 5, and that came in at an 82, right? This game comes out October 29th. The big thing with this game is that a lot of the reviews are going to be predicated on the current gen version of this game, right? Because the next gen version obviously doesn't come out till the next gen consoles. And I don't know how much those are going to reflect in the Metacritic score at the end of the day to tilt it in one direction or another. Because if you didn't know about Watch Dogs Legion, its core mechanic is you can basically get anybody in the world to be a part of your secret hacker group. And it's doing a lot of things technologically. It's pretty lofty in its goals for what it wants to do with its mechanics. And I do think it's going to be hindered by current gen software or hardware, sorry. And I think this game will be better on next gen systems. I personally am waiting to play it on the next gen systems because I want to see it at its full potential, right? Instead of being held back. That being said, like I previously mentioned, I think a lot of the reviews for this game are going to be on current gen systems, and therefore it's not going to review as well as I think it'll review on next gen systems. So I think Watch Dogs Legion will come in with a 78 on Metacritic.
Okay, that's pretty good. I don't have as good of a feeling about it. I think that mechanic of there's not really a single protagonist. I think that's gonna maybe hit really well with a couple reviewers, but I think it's also gonna miss maybe more often with others. And it's not. This is less of a case of what if we're talking about like a Persona game. The people who review that are going to be really into Persona, so they're going to understand it. This is going to be, this is kind of a wider audience kind of a game,
and a big risk.
Exactly, and a big risk and a brand new mechanic. So like, I just don't have like full faith that so many reviewers are going to like it that much. I'm not as worried about like it being on this gen versus next. In fact, well, whole discussion for another day. But I think I'm still going to go lower. I'm going to say 73. I think it could pull okay. like I think,
which is still a good review for a game, by the way.
Yeah, just maybe not quite as high as some other Ubisoft ones, maybe.
And that's the thing is like
Watchdog games, at least.
This game has a chance of being more fun than it is good, right? It totally has a Marvel's Avengers thing of like. People can have a blast of this game, but it could also not review well. This could also be, when I said earlier for Immortals, this could be the game where the user base loves it and the critics don't like it, right? It could be the Days Gone situation. I think those two are probably the biggest candidates of that disparity between the two. Yeah, interesting. I think I am being a little generous at 78. I do think this game could totally be a low 70s, even a 60s, depending on how broken it is at launch. Like that could totally be a case too of it, the system just not working. How repetitive are the different people? Like if you get all grannies on your team, like people want to do you then notice the flaws in, oh, these are all different, but very slightly. Like it's not really like these are individual characters. They're just slightly tweaked versions of the same grandma, right? You could see that in the final reviews of the game.
It did get like a pretty significant delay, right? Which isn't necessarily a good sign. Because maybe it still needed another one, but the fact that it got delayed 6 or 7 months or something like that, I think potentially says it was broken and they took the extra time to fix it, right? So you hope at least.
I do think this is totally also a Titanfall 2 situation of why is this game coming out so close to Assassin's Creed? Like obviously we know why because they want to get sales and stuff, but I just think they're setting this game out to die either way in terms of sales. Like it's or push it to the next gen release so it launches day and date for everything. I don't know. It's very weird the way they're handling that game. Anyways, next up, Demon's Souls. This is an interesting one. So obviously this is being developed by Bluepoint and Japan Studio, releasing November 12th alongside the PlayStation 5. The original Demon's Souls is at an 89 on Metacritic. Obviously, that was developed by From Software. Another bit of research I went and did is that I went and looked at the original Shadow of the Colossus, Dom, and then I looked at the remake of Shadow of the Colossus because that was also done by Japan Studio and Bluepoint Games because I wanted to see the difference in the review score, right, of how different it was. Turns out the original Shadow of the Colossus, 91 on Metacritic. The remake, what do you think the remake was, or did you already look it up?
Blessing was talking about this, but it was better. I think it was 92, right?
91. Also 91.
Same. Okay.
Yep. And he might have checked it at an earlier time and it hadn't dropped, right? Because that's just how Metacritic is. But yeah, same score. Now you can sit there and say like, okay, well, Demon's Souls originally got an 89, Jerrad. Do you think that, the remake is going to get an 89? And yeah, that's the case. I'm going with an 89. There's a little bit of pause there. And the reason I say that is I think at launch, it'll be in the low 90s. I think it'll be like 91, 92, right? Somewhere in there. 90, 91, 92. But like I said, we're going to count these scores December 31st. And I think by the time December 31st comes down, it'll drop to that 89. Because we've seen in the past, it's really hard to have a Metacritic score that stays a 90. A lot of games launch into 90, but then slowly drop 2 or 3 points into the high 80s, right? So I think that's what's going to happen to Demon's Souls is by that time that December 31st comes around, it's going to be at an 89, sitting safe and pretty with the OG version of that. What do you think?
I wanted to say like 91 or 92. I wanted to. But I've not done this math, but to get that average, I feel like you have to have a 10 or several 10s, perfect scores,
For
right?
For sure. Yeah.
Whereas like anything lower than that, you could get like a lot of 9.5s kind of a thing. And I think it will improve upon the old score, so I'm gonna go with 90. So it's gonna be a little bit better, just because this is just the type of game that it's just poised to review well, because no one is gonna be given the job of reviewing this game that isn't intimately familiar with FromSoft games. And this is, granted, I've never played. This is the only one I've never played, but it's the original, and it's supposed to be like a lot of people's top 1 or 2 FromSoft games, and that was even thinking about the original game. So if they're able to modernize this, and just the way it looked from that trailer, like it graphically looks incredible. And there are some janky things with the original game that I've seen some gameplay clips of too, like that can be improved upon, like not so much making it easier, but quality of life stuff. Obviously, like the loading times, because this is a PS5 game, we expect are going to be non-existent. A lot of stuff like that. I think it's going to be better, so I'm going with 90.
And the interesting thing with this game too is we can compare it to Shadow of the Colossus because it was an OG game that got remade by these same development studios. But there's a big difference there. Like Shadow of the Colossus, not taking away from its greatness, a very, very simple game mechanically and scope-wise, right? In terms of comparing it directly with Demon's Souls, which
just
means that
an easier remake.
It's
straight up
harder to screw up, right? In my opinion, it's like harder to screw up because it's so simplistic. With Demon's Souls, not only is it a game that's a lot bigger in scope, like you said, people who are going to be reviewing this are very intimate with From Software, and if Bluepoint in Japan don't nail it in the way that feels uniquely From, I think they could get docked a little bit harsher by the critics, right? Because From has this, I don't know, Team Eco, when people review those games, I think they're a little bit more friendly to them, whereas diehard From fans, if somebody else is touching it that's not From, they're going to be a little bit harsher on it, right? So it could go either way. I still don't think there's any chance this game reviews lower than like an 86, 87, but It'll be interesting to see where it falls in terms of high 80s, low 90s. Yeah, We'll see. Next up, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This is being developed by Ubisoft Montreal, releasing alongside the Xbox Series consoles November 10th, 2020. Here's the thing. They didn't develop Odyssey, right? So Odyssey had an 87 on Metacritic. They did, however, develop Assassin's Creed Origins. And Origins is sitting at an 85 on Metacritic. Obviously, people laud Odyssey for as good as it was, but Origins is very good in its own right. Coming off of a 2-year hiatus where the last mainline entry, Syndicate, finished with a high 70 Metacritic score. So it's a pretty big jump. I'm pretty confident in Ubisoft Montreal. My one worry is all of the issues with the game director and him leaving. With that, though, Ubisoft has so many developers and their teams are so large, and this game was so far into development that I don't think him leaving really affected this game at all. And I do think that we've seen upgrades in terms of the visuals of this game recently, as opposed to when we first saw the title in June. I'm going to play it safe. And because it is departing even further from the Assassin's Creed formula, I'm going to go with an 83. So it would score the lowest out of Odyssey, Origins, and this. But I just think the way this game is being developed, it's being a launch title, coming out alongside all of these other games, I do think that they may be a little bit harsher on it because we're already past the quote unquote new Assassin's Creed, right? The reboot of the series. And I do think it is at a point now where people are going to start judging it with the even, finer microscope. So I think 83 is a safe score, and that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, I think I'm similar to you, where a lot of people really loved Odyssey. And if they're like me, then a lot of that was built on that protagonist. We can't ever stop praising Cassandra on this show. But if Valhalla doesn't have, doesn't have an intriguing protagonist, then I think that could make a big difference in this, because otherwise it's they say they changed some things up with how you do quests and a handful of other things, but
plus the base building, there's like some new stuff outside of that. But I'm with you that the reason Odyssey got an 87 is because Assassin's Creed games are always like built pretty well. It's always the narrative where they get dinged on a lot,
right?
And with Odyssey, everyone loved Cassandra. I doubt the high scores were people playing as Alexios for that game.
Right.
So
yeah. And then if you look back even further, like people really loved Assassin's Creed 2, people loved Ezio. And then as soon as we hit Assassin's Creed 3 with, I want to say his name is Connor, he was bland and no one liked him. And that, like, among other things, that really hurt the review scores for that game. So, like you said, the narrative and the characters can make or break these games. So I think I'm with you. I'm going to go in the lower 80s. I'm going to say 82.
82? Okay. Yeah, I do think there's not a chance it drops below an 80 just because this team is very talented, And I remember Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag was essentially a launch title too, that cross-gen title. And I don't remember how that reviewed. I didn't look that up. Could you look that up real quick?
4?
What's Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag?
Need an apostrophe, Dom. What are you doing? And it's not the number 4. It's Roman numerals.
Yeah, it's the Roman numerals.
I'm just swinging out on everything here. Oh, but it's IV, not 4 eyes. Wow. Okay. 80. Well, this is interesting. On PlayStation 3, it was an 88, but on Xbox 360 is an 86, and then on PC is an 84.
Okay.
On PlayStation 4, it's down to an 83. That's odd. Whatever.
I think it had issues on PlayStation 3 when it came out. It had like weird. A lot of games, third-party games, had issues on PlayStation 3.
That's the highest one. Was PS3 at an 88.
Okay, I thought you said 83 for some reason.
Yeah, PS4.
PS4. Sorry. Okay, so it's opposite of that. Okay, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, which is odd because usually you're right. The multi-plat PS3 games kind of got dinged a point or two because they didn't run as well. Anyway.
Yeah, interesting. Next up, Spider-Man Miles Morales. This game is coming out obviously on PS4 and PS5. Insomniac Games is the developer, releasing alongside the PlayStation 5 November 12th. Previous game, Marvel's Spider-Man, is sitting at an 87 on Metacritic, which is higher than I thought it would eventually land at, because I love that game. Absolutely love that game. But, people can be with superheroes and all that stuff. I'm surprised it's still stuck in an 87, which is pretty great. Spider-Man Miles Morales. Some interesting things here. Smaller scope, right? Much smaller scope. Releasing on 2 generations of consoles, but once again, for the sake of our extravaganza, we're only looking at the highest and next-gen score, which is the PS5, because it's not coming out on Xbox, obviously. Here's the thing, Dom. When I'm looking at this game, it may be a smaller scope, but I think that might help it in reviews, because I do think it could trim a lot of the issues that people had with Spider-Man. The Mary Jane segments, the Miles segments, just a lot of that stuff that the how would I put it? The bloat in terms of the side missions, right? Like a lot of that stuff. I do think, and I loved a lot of that stuff, but I understand from a critic's perspective why those would get dinged. I think because of its smaller scope, because of the love people have for Miles, because of the representation in this game, and I know those last few things I said don't really go towards reviewing the game, but I do think because of that, writing a narrative for that character that can absolutely nail. And they've already established this world. They've already established a lot of the systems. I think the one concern I have is how different does the combat feel and how unique does it feel, right? Because I enjoy the combat in Marvel Spider-Man, but it does need to feel unique to Miles, and that's a big thing. And to the scope, though I'm saying this could be the reason why it reviews higher, if it is way shorter than we think it's going to be, that could affect it too, because, you know, you don't really review based on like the length of a game, but in that sense, pacing is a huge thing, right? Does this thing feel like it's paced out of its mind in terms of it's too fast, right? Of like they needed to get from point A to point D to point C as absolutely fast as possible. Is the writing good? There's a lot of questions there, but I'm pretty optimistic on this game. I do think that trimming a lot of those things, because they've already stated Miles is the only playable character in this game. And that could be like developer fluff of like maybe there's a secret thing where we play as Peter for a small segment. But I doubt we're getting, like I said, the Mary Jane segments or the Miles segments to that extent that we did in the original Miles or Marvel Spider-Man. I am going, Dom, with a 90.
I thought this might be the first game on the list where like each of us had like, you know, actually different predictions, because we've been basically a monolith thus far, like within 2 points close on every game. Because I thought I was crazy for thinking as positively as or as hyped as I was, because I'm also super high on this, and I think this has like super high potential. Whereas a lot of sequels sometimes get dinged for being too similar to their predecessor. I think this isn't as much at risk for that, but more will be looked at through the lens of, like you mentioned, perfecting, you know, the handful of things that just weren't quite perfect in the last game, right? And that's, being that we're getting a different protagonist, I think is kind of what drives that, where like, if they can make Miles feel just a little bit different, you know, different enough than Peter did, then I think they've accomplished like that, you know, defeating that risk of it being the same game as the original, especially when we assume that it's the same map. Maybe that's already been said, but like it's got to be the same or very similar map, except there's snow, right? So
it's
like,
going to be Brooklyn for sure. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if Brooklyn was in Marvel Spider-Man. If it was in, I don't know. But it's going to be smaller. It's going to be covered in snow. That's pretty much all we know.
Right. Yeah. So there is a little bit of risk of like, it's just the same game, but I think, yeah, being Miles now, pretty drastically different, you know, character with different powers. Like this game, I think, just is in the position to do really well. I think it could be propelled even a little bit further if, I mean, they have to somehow show like this is different. Miles is not Peter, because Miles is black, and that's different, frankly, right? Like the way the world is going to interact with him as Spider-Man, Hispanic. Especially.
He's also
Hispanic, right? So
or Latino technically, because he's Puerto Rican. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so like the way the world, especially a vigilante who aren't always, you know, looked upon highly by law enforcement, that's going to be different for him than it would have been Peter. I guess kind of collapsing on myself a little bit here, because if you don't know who Spider-Man is, you wouldn't know he's Miles. You wouldn't know he's black. So I guess I didn't think of that. But,
well, his suit is black, though, and they could do some symbolic stuff there.
Yeah, and so I really hope that, I don't expect it to be like, you know, that's the whole theme of the story or anything weird like that. You know, it's not gonna be over the top, but like they have to, you know, address certain, you know, racial themes in this game, and I think that's important, especially as like how Miles is treated by the police and people around him. I don't know. I think there's potential there. It could also be messed up.
Yeah, there could be sections where you experience stuff through as Miles, right? Not as Spider-Man Miles, but like as Miles and Genki, like going throughout their day-to-day lives and him having an interaction with the police officer, not as Spider-Man, and seeing how different that is than interacting with him with the mask on, right? You could have that parallel as well.
I'm literally picturing Miles kind of, I've been thinking about this for a while, and I don't have all the details, but he gets, you know, in trouble doing something like for the purpose of helping someone, like as Spider-Man, but he just didn't happen to have the suit on. Yeah. And maybe like, and so a cop stops him, right? And he's like, no, you gotta let me finish this. I gotta go save so-and-so. And he's like, I'm Spider-Man. Like the suit is in my backpack right now. And he pulls it out, and the cop's like, yeah, right. And just doesn't believe him, you know?
Yeah.
I could see something along those lines, and then the rest of it kind of writes itself. But that's just something I pictured in my head. I think that's got to be part of it.
And to your point of, you know, them trying to make sure that this doesn't feel like the same game with just a different skin on the main character. Lost Legacy came out after 5 Uncharted games, right? And they had the difficult task of making sure that it felt like its own game, right? Like, why make an Uncharted game without Nathan Drake? Like, what's even the point? And they nailed it. And obviously that was Naughty Dog, not Insomniac. And for Insomniac, they're only working with one other game. So in my mind, if Naughty Dog can handle that, I think both those studios are immensely talented. I do think Insomniac can nail it too. So
yeah.
With all that being said, what do you think?
I'm gonna go 92. Like 92? I think this is gonna pull like a Big 10, like IGN or GameSpot. Someone bigger is gonna, one of those sites that are weighted heavier on Metacritic is gonna hit it with a 10. It's gonna kind of propel it up a bit.
Yeah, I'm just worried about some of the saltier critics that are gonna be like, it's neat playing as Miles, but I would have preferred a brand new map, or you know what I mean? Like, it feels too similar, that kind of stuff. That's why I set it at 90, because by December 31st, I'm like, is some of the love and polish of that game gonna fade away, and it drops to a 90?
These are super high predictions,
yeah. Next up, the last game on the list, Cyberpunk 2077, being developed by CD Projekt Red, releasing November 19th, 2020. Witcher 3 got a 92 on Metacritic. The DLC for Witcher 3, Heart of Stone or Hearts of Stone, got a 90. And Blood and Wine got a 94. So we're looking at a pretty good track record here between their last 3 releases. Here's the thing. Cyberpunk has obviously, 2077 has been going through a lot of turmoil in terms of crunch in the media. There's a lot of questions about the writing of this game and how problematic it could possibly be, especially with the Latinx community. There's a lot of stereotypical stuff that's been around since the initial previews of this game at E3. Remember, we had this discussion about, especially me, as somebody who is Latinx and grew up in, this type of culture. A lot of that stuff is a little cringy. It is a little like, man, did you just watch 80s movies with, Latinos in them and Latinas?
It's cringy to me, and I couldn't be, less exposed to that culture than anyone in the planet. It's still cringy to me. So yeah,
as a white dude in Michigan, yeah. I think that's where my worry lies in this game. I do think from a gameplay and mechanics perspective, I think they're gonna nail it. Like, knowing CD Projekt Red and the craftsmanship they put into their games, I think if you were literally just reviewing everything that wasn't narrative or writing, this game could likely be a high 90s, right? 95, 96. When you add in that layer of the writing of this game and the nuance that needs to be had and the current political climate we're in, I don't know if they're necessarily going to nail everything. And to me, The Witcher 3 was a surprise to a lot of people. Now, it's not saying that Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 didn't review very well and weren't praised highly. They were. But Witcher 3 was CD Projekt Red's coming out party to the world, right? In general, as a monolith, high-quality developer in this industry. Cyberpunk 2077 is them going into a completely new theme, into a completely new genre. Maybe not a completely new genre, but you know what I mean. But especially a theme, modern futuristic RPG,
first
as opposed
person
to fantasy RPG. Different perspective as well. Different core gameplay, right? Instead of melee combat. I mean, you have melee combat in the game, but they're also having the shooting mechanics, right? First-person shooter. I just think a lot of this stuff ends up putting it in a place, especially with the writing, where this gets judged a lot more critically than Witcher 3 did now that Witcher 3 exists, because we know what they are at their best, right? And I do think there's a direct comparison for CD Projekt Red now. And to me, in my mind, I see this game coming out, getting a lot of 9s, maybe 1 or 2 10s, maybe a couple of them, hits at a 92, as these other outlets that don't maybe get the early access to the game to put it up on embargo start playing this game. You start getting a more variety of opinion on this. And to my point, I'm just going to put it bluntly, there's not a whole lot of Latinx reviewers at high marking places. So I think the initial reviews aren't going to be as harsh on it. And I think once more people in the industry get a hold of it, that's when you'll see a lot more of the lofty criticism towards, I don't want to say exploitation because that's a little harsh, but just the tone deafness of it in some aspects. Yeah. And I could definitely see the score dropping. And that's why I think it's going to be an 88 when it's said and done. I don't think it's going to stay at 90 just because there's so much going on here. When you make a fantasy game with a bunch of white people, you don't really have to worry about that stuff. When you make a futuristic game with all these different cultures, your lack of experience or focus on that is going to shine. And I don't think Cyberpunk's going to end. I think we'll love it. Don't get me wrong. But I do think 88 is where it's going to land at the end of the day.
So you're saying 88. Shoot. All right. Man, so one of the best parts, probably the best part, actually, I'll say, from The Witcher 3 was, to me, the writing especially in all the side quests. Like that's kind of what took that game like over the top, right? And so any amount of like that cringy dialogue and characters that we expect or that we've seen so far from Cyberpunk, I think are going to be kind of outweighed by like incredible writing in the side quests and the quests. And then additionally, like you pointed out, most reviewers at the big sites aren't Hispanic, so it's not going to bother them potentially as much. At least not. It'll probably get pointed out plenty, but I don't think that it's going to get dinged, review points significantly from it, especially when the rest of the writing is so good. I'm assuming. Where I think it could get dinged, though, is, this game's coming out on a lot of platforms. It's already been delayed. We know they're going through crazy crunch and have been to get it done. It's coming out on Xbox One, S, X, Series S, Series X, PlayStation 4 Pro, and PlayStation 5, and PC, of course. So like,
and Stadia.
It's coming out at launch on Stadia?
Yeah.
Holy crap. That's a lot of platforms, man. And like CD Projekt, like, they're wizards, don't get me wrong, but like even Witcher 3 at launch, had its fair share of bugs, and I think a lot of reviews cited that too. So I think that, along with like its first-person gameplay, like a good portion of that is going to be melee gameplay, which they publicly said they're not quite sure if they got it right. So that combined, I just think that it could be buggy. I think it could be buggy as shit.
I
think people could run into like game-breaking type bugs and losing saves or crazy stuff like that. I think is not out of the question. But then I also think like the shooting and the melee combat itself might not be like as good as we think, as polished as we think, because that's a big change from the Witcher games. So I like in my heart I want to be like, oh, it'll come out to a 93, right? But I think I'm more aligned with you on this. I mean, it's not as interesting of a conversation because we're always so similar, but I like 88. I think is reasonable. I'll say, man, I'll say 90. At the end of the day, I think like the writing is going to be fucking bomb, and the world I think is what's going to like bring it home and over the top of like just exploring Night City and all the crazy characters and all the nonsense and ridiculousness. I think it's just going to bring it over the top.
And just to clarify, I hope I'm dead wrong. Like, I hope this game is like a high, mid, low 90s. But as somebody who is, Latinx, I'm worried because if I was reviewing this and it had a lot of those issues, I would ding it for that stuff, because if you're going to write about a culture, you should maybe get it right. And maybe they have. Maybe they've reworked a lot of that stuff. Who knows?
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah. And here's the thing, too. It's going to be tough because a lot of these gangs are based on cultures. Like, there's the Jamaican culture, right? That's in one of the gangs, the Voodoo Boys, which is, I guess, not necessarily Jamaican. It's more like Creole. But if they nail that and then they mess up the Latinx thing, it's like, well, it wasn't because they weren't focusing on doing the culture right. It's that they messed up on one of the cultures that they were doing. You know what I mean? It's going to be complicated. We'll see what happens.
That is an interesting discussion. Like, and a lot of people are bringing a lot of that stuff up that like I've never thought about. But like a lot of times you see these stereotypes, especially in games, where like, oh, yep, we have like the Jamaican group or whatever, and like they're all wearing Rasta hats, and like they're called the Voodoo Boys, and it's like, here we go. I mean, I don't know. And then,
to clarify, so you don't get roasted for this, I made the mistake of saying Jamaican. The voodoo stuff is for like Louisiana and the down south, which is technically like Creole folk, which are closer to like French, than they are to Jamaican, right? Because like all the whole Creole stuff is like African American and French cultures kind of mixed together. So more Creole than Jamaican. That was my mistake.
Okay,
just to clarify, so you don't get roasted.
I'll probably, maybe I deserve it, but like, and then a similar thing, because I've been playing Ghost of Tsushima, and it's like, okay, everyone's Japanese, and it's like, is there every single time that in a video game there's a lot of Japanese characters that like everything, like their only motivation is just honor?
Oh yeah, like, that was a big thing with Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah,
right. And it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of like noticing that as people pointed out, like, oh yeah, that is kind of every single time. I'm not the one to say if that's right or wrong, but it just seems like maybe there's more to people in groups than video games display.
Well, that's why we need to have more people reviewing these games that come from different backgrounds, right?
And making them.
Exactly, as well. So it's 2 bonus things. We have a chance to get 4 bonus points, Dom. And I'm not springing this on you until right now. And I'll go over my review scores for you after I ask the questions to you, because obviously I have the list in front of me of our scores and you don't have that. 1, we're gonna pick the biggest misstep, which is the score that each of us decided was the farthest from what the score is going to be. So basically, I'm going to pick the score that I think you got the most wrong, right? So which one I think you said was the farthest from what the actual score is, and you're going to do the same for me. Then we're going to do the opposite of that, and we're going to pick the score that we think each of us got the closest to what the actual score is going to be, right? So basically, I'm picking what I think you got most wrong and most right, and you're picking what you think I got most wrong and most right. You want me to... We'll do the first one of which ones we think we got most wrong. I'm going to tell you the game and my score, and then you can decide, okay, Dom? So Bugsnax, I said 75. Yakuza, 85. Immortals, 70. Medium, 76. Black Ops Cold War, 83. Watch Dogs Legion, 78. Demon Souls, 89. Valhalla, 83. Miles Morales, 90. Cyberpunk, 88.
All right, so it's between 2, and I think you're high on both of these. I think you're high on Bugsnax and Legion, Watch Dogs Legion. Now, that being said, I'm going to say Bugsnax is too high. That's
Bugsnax.
The biggest miss.
I think one of the ones that could be a trap is I could be dead wrong on Cyberpunk too. 88's like kind of low for what people expect from that game. And if that game comes out like as a 94, I'm 6 points off. You know what I mean?
94. I get 94. You know, that's...
We never know. I'm just saying.
I think
maybe
you're pretty
it's an 82,
close.
And I'm still 6 points off, huh? But yeah,
that to me
is
is
a good call.
More likely.
Yeah. Bugsnax could be like a 68, dude. And I'm off by like 7 points. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just kind of, it's the biggest unknown, I think, out of the whole list, probably.
I'm looking at your scores real quick, and the funny thing is, like, a lot of our scores are very similar. So it's like, which one do I think I also got wrong? Right. Let's see. I'm gonna go with Yakuza Like a Dragon. You said an 82. I don't think there's a chance that game's below an 84. So, I'm just double checking. Bugsnax 71. I think you're about right on that. Yeah, like a lot of these were like 1 point separated. The only one we're kind of far on is Watch Dogs Legion, and I don't think you're too far off. I think I was being a little bit too optimistic. I think you're closer with 73. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Yakuza.
We maybe should have done like picked our scores ahead of time before talking, because I'm wondering if we like confirmed each other's biases a little bit. Just kind of
who knows,
talked each other into it. Like, oh yeah, you got a good point. Like,
But we both have the same amount of information here. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So we're both going into picking our scores on the same level, whereas one of us could have done more research or saw something that the person didn't see, and then you know what I mean. So I think this is better. Now we're picking the one that we think we nailed, the other person nailed. So which one do you think I got most right? Do you want me to read through them again?
Yeah, you're gonna have to.
Okay, Bugsnax 75, Yakuza 85, Immortal 70, Medium 76, Black Ops 83, Watch Dogs 78, Demon Souls 89. Valhalla 83, Miles 90, Cyberpunk 88.
Call of Duty. That's like that's a fastball right down the middle.
Okay. What did I give it? 80 something?
83.
Yeah. I thought you were gonna go with Demon Souls. That's what I thought you were gonna go with.
Yeah, I thought of that too. I considered it.
Let's see. Which one did Dom get most right? The Bugsnax 71 is a pretty good prediction. I think that could totally nail it. Watch Dogs Legion 73 is also really good. Valhalla 82, no. Miles Morales 82. It's funny because the one you picked for me was one of the higher ones. The one I might pick for you is one of the lower ones. You know what? I think you nailed this Bugsnax one, man. I honestly do. The 71.
It feels that's where it's going to be. I just got a feeling.
So to recap, I think Dom's guess of Yakuza being an 82 on Metacritic is his worst prediction, and I think him saying Bugsnax is going to be a 71 is his best prediction. Dom thinks my Bugsnax prediction is 75 is my worst prediction, and my Cold War of 83 is my best prediction. Once again, if we get those right, we get 2 bonus points. The person who was asked the question, not the the score we're looking at, so keep that in mind. So if you pitch perfect, you can get 14 points. That's what we're aiming for. 14 points perfectly. We'll review this list. I'm going to save it. We're going to review this on the first podcast of the new year. But on December 31st, I'm going to check all the scores. I'm going to post it in Discord for Dom, so we're all on the up and up. And then we'll go over it on our first podcast back after the holiday break that we normally do. This was a fun episode. We didn't really cover news, but this was cool, going by game and talking about it. Dom, how did you enjoy it?
No, I agree. It's definitely fun. I like doing it.
Was your idea.
Yeah. Normally you have all the ideas for this kind of stuff, but I find, these kind of episodes, unless there's, crazy news, that's always fun to talk about. But when there's not, like this week, a slower news week, like it's fun to do something like this. And especially because like there's a lot of big games coming out this fall, man. Like a few months ago, earlier this year, it was less clear. We didn't even know Spider-Man Miles Morales was a thing, and so on and so forth. But yeah, there's a lot of big games, so it's kind of fun to figure out, kind of predict where they're going to land.
Yeah, I mean, with the Game Awards too, like we don't even know what's on the horizon for next year either, which is really exciting. I know what's going to be announced there. Do we see a return of, man, it's been so long, Dom, I forgot the name. Oh my God. Elden Ring. Whew, that was close. I almost forgot the name.
Elden Ring. I forgot all about it. But yeah, where's that at? And then also, maybe we can, we're probably going to have to do some Game Awards predictions later on, but like, do we see a trailer for Starfield that ends in Xbox console exclusive?
Only on Xbox, yeah.
I don't know. I think it can happen.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have a Game Awards prediction. I mean, if this Microsoft event gets formally announced on the US side of things, it's not just a New Zealand thing, we might do a prediction for that too, the event that's happening the day before the launch of the console. So we'll see what happens. Also, in the coming weeks, we're going to be doing a look back at our favorite games of this current gen. Hopefully, we'll have some guests on for that too. But it was a good time talking about these Metacritic predictions. Real quick, I don't have a whole lot to say about what I've been playing. Maybe you do, Dom. In terms of what I've been playing, pretty much the same old stuff that I talk about all the time. Fortnite's Halloween event started, which is pretty cool. The whole like maps covered in fog. Still working my way through the battle pass, trying to get all the Marvel stuff. Almost done there. They added, if you finish almost every challenge in the game, Dom, because they have Wolverine, right? They added his classic like white tank top, cigar in the mouth skin, like his OG like Wolverine skin, which is pretty cool. On top of his like his iconic blue and yellow, and then his OG yellow and brown suits. So I'm trying to unlock that as well. Marvel's Avengers, I have some late breaking news. I reached total max level with Captain America. Gear level 150, nice. Character level 50. Good to go for endgame content. Really excited there. The one mishap is that all of my armor is 5 stars because they all have individual ratings too of like how good they are. All of my armor except for one piece is 5 stars, that one being a 4-star. And I've been looking for like 3 weeks for a 4-star of that specific item. I have 5-star and I just can't find it. So I'm working on Hulk now, having a blast with him. I have him level 50, gear level like 120 something. So I'm getting close with him too. Like I said, game's not great, but it is fun. I just love playing that game. It's my podcast game. And I can't wait for the quality of life stuff with, improved loading times and performance stuff and Kate Bishop and Clint Barton and all that stuff.
Man, so while I'm in this prediction mood, a few months back, I believe I predicted that Marvel's Avengers would outsell Call of Duty Cold War, which we now know is the title, in the year 2020.
Yeah.
Do you think that's realistic? I'm starting to doubt it.
It sold the best in September, like Avengers did. The thing is it's if they can get Kate Bishop and Clint Barton out both before the end of 2020, I think you have a really good chance. Mm-hmm. If this recent push with the DLC happened because Kate Bishop was supposed to happen in October, if her getting pushed to November pushes Clint to next year, I think you might be on your toes. Also, it's Call of Duty. Like, I don't know.
It's tough.
I think it'll be closer than people think either way. You know what I mean? So we'll see what happens there.
Certainly, I mean, by the time it's like Avengers, that's going to be a game that's going on for like maybe a decade, or certainly throughout this whole next generation, right? So certainly by the end of its life, it's going to have sold 20, 30 million copies or something like that.
Yeah, it'll outsell Cold War at the end of the day, but in 2020,
absolutely.
and probably not, maybe not. Anyways, that's it for everything I've been playing. Haven't hopped into Animal Crossing Halloween stuff yet, and they haven't released the Crown Tundra DLC for Pokemon until tonight, which obviously, like I said, we're recording October 22nd. Supposed to come out today. Thought it was coming out this morning, not till later this afternoon. Yeah, but that's that. You played anything of note?
Just more Ghost of Tsushima. It's still a lot of fun. It's the first like big open world game in a long time where I've felt like really compelled to like go to every single question mark and find everything. I don't know. It's really, I think I said last week, like it's just the world is so really beautiful and nice to look at. Like, so exploring and going to find those little things, even when you might not care about the actual reward, it's just kind of nice, like exploring and discovering stuff and clearing zones and all that kind of typical open world stuff. It's got some rough edges. The more I get into it, the more I'm finding it does that annoying video game thing where there's no button prompt to climb a ladder, and so you find yourself like, going into the side of the ladder, like doing that thing, and you're like, why can't I climb this damn ladder? It's like, that's one thing. There's a few other small things like that you're just like, those little nuisances that hopefully get ironed out. I do want to try this new Legends update that they came out with, that apparently a lot of people seem to love. I don't know if it's something that like you need other people to play with, because then I might be out of luck, but it seems interesting at least. So
yeah, it has a lot of games as a service elements in terms of finding gear and all of that, and if you really enjoy that gameplay, it's probably a blast. Really cool concept, because we've had this discussion before. PlayStation hasn't really done a good job with multiplayer stuff this last gen as a whole,
right,
in terms of exclusives, and this is really cool because it does give a an exclusive multiplayer experience that fans have kind of been harping for Sony to have. Some people are like, oh, are all first-party games going to have this type of thing moving forward where they add a multiplayer mode post-launch? I'm like, I don't know. Cool your jets a little bit there. Like, I think this was more so Sucker Punch than it was PlayStation,
Yeah.
Where's Factions, though? I'd be down to... Yeah, we'll see what happens there. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to episode 210 of the Controlled Interest Gamecast. You can find us on iTunes. Leave us a review. 5 stars definitely helps us out. You can find us on Spotify as well. Listen to us there. Have a good time. YouTube, search Controlled Interest. Will pop right up. Subscribe to us there so you never miss a new episode of the podcast. Like the video. If you like the video, leave us a comment. Let me know what's going on. If you enjoyed the show, you want to respond to anything we've said on the show. What else am I missing? Twitter. You go to Twitter, Controlled Interests, at CTRLINT. That's Controlled Interests abbreviated. Our account will pop right up. Individually, you can find Dom at Dom's Oreos. You can find me at Jerrad_. I want to preface this. If you don't like reading political tweets, maybe don't follow me until after November 3rd, because I have my fair share of stuff. But yeah, that is what it is. We'll catch you guys next week.
And try to take some advice and learn some things too, or have a perspective. I don't know. Never mind. I'm getting weird.
Or, reply to my tweets and let's have a conversation, as long as you're, respectful.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyways, we'll be back next week, hopefully talking about our best, or not bet, well, in our mind, the best games of this current gen. We might do something else depending on if any big breaking news happens. We'll catch you guys then.